What happens when two of music's biggest personalities clash on live television in a way that nobody saw coming? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation between Jason Aldean and Kelly Clarkson that left audiences stunned and had everyone talking for weeks. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is something much deeper that reveals the real tensions brewing beneath the surface of the music industry. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story has layers that will blow your mind. The Kelly Clarkson Show was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance for Jason Aldean. He was there to talk about his latest album, maybe share some stories from the road, the usual friendly banter that fans expect from daytime television. Kelly had done hundreds of these interviews, her warm personality and genuine curiosity making guests feel comfortable enough to open up in ways they rarely did elsewhere. But from the moment Jason walked onto that stage, something felt different. "Jason Aldean, everybody," Kelly announced with her trademark enthusiasm. But there was already a subtle tension in the air that keen observers might have picked up on. Jason settled into his chair with a polite smile, but his body language suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with whatever direction this conversation might take. "Thanks for having me, Kelly," Jason replied, his voice carrying that familiar country drawl, but with an edge that wasn't usually present in his media appearances. "Always good to be here." Kelly dove right in with what seemed like innocent enough territory. "So, your new album has been getting incredible response from fans. The authenticity in your music has always been something people connect with. How important is it for you to stay true to your roots as you've achieved this level of success?" It was the kind of softball question that should have led to an easy, rehearsed answer about staying grounded and remembering where you came from. Instead, Jason's response carried an unexpected bite. "You know, Kelly, authenticity is an interesting word choice there," Jason said, leaning forward slightly. "Because I think there's a lot of people in this industry who throw that word around without really understanding what it means. Real authenticity means standing by your principles, even when it's not popular. Even when people try to tear you down for it." Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly at the pointed nature of his response, but she maintained her professional composure. "That's absolutely true. And speaking of principles, your music has always celebrated small-town values, traditional American life. Do you think there's room for different perspectives in country music today?" "Different perspectives," Jason repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "See, that's where I think we've gotten off track as a society. There's a difference between different perspectives and trying to fundamentally change what something is. Country music has always been about certain values, certain ways of life. When you start trying to make it into something it's not, when you start pushing agendas that go against those core values, then you're not really doing country music anymore." The studio audience had gone noticeably quieter, sensing that this conversation was heading somewhere unexpected. Kelly's smile became more forced, as she realized this wasn't going to be the lighthearted chat she had planned. "I think music has always been about bringing people together, though," Kelly offered carefully. "Your songs certainly do that. They speak to experiences that lots of people share, regardless of their background or where they're from." Jason's laugh had a harsh edge to it. "Bringing people together, sure. But not by compromising everything you believe in. Not by bending over backwards to make everyone happy. Sometimes bringing people together means standing up for what's right, even if it makes some folks uncomfortable." Kelly was starting to understand that Jason had come onto her show with something specific on his mind, and she wasn't sure she liked where this was heading. Her natural instinct as a host was to try to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But something in Jason's demeanor suggested he wasn't going to let that happen. "Well, I think we can all agree that music should be a place where everyone feels welcome," Kelly said diplomatically. "Your fans certainly come from all walks of life, and they all seem to find something meaningful in your work." "All walks of life," Jason echoed, and there was something almost mocking in his tone. "Kelly, can I ask you something? Do you actually listen to country music, or are you just reading talking points someone wrote for you?" The question hit Kelly like a slap. In all her years of hosting, guests rarely challenged her directly, and certainly not in such a confrontational way. The audience could sense the shift in energy, the way the conversation had suddenly become personal. "Of course, I listen to country music," Kelly replied, her voice remaining steady, but with a slight coolness creeping in. "I grew up in Texas, Jason. Country music was part of my childhood, just like it was for millions of other people. And I think that's exactly my point. It speaks to people from different backgrounds, different experiences." Jason leaned back in his chair, studying Kelly with an expression that suggested he wasn't buying what she was selling. Different experiences, different backgrounds. You keep coming back to that. Tell me, Kelly, what do you think country music is really about? It was a loaded question, and Kelly knew it. Whatever answer she gave was likely to be used against her in whatever point Jason was trying to make. But she was too experienced a host to back down from a direct challenge. I think country music is about storytelling, Kelly said firmly. It's about real life, real emotions, real struggles and triumphs. It's about family, community, love, loss, working hard for what you have. It's about being honest about who you are and where you come from. That's a pretty good textbook answer, Jason said. And the condescension in his voice was unmistakable now. But you're missing something crucial. Country music isn't just about any stories. It's about specific stories. It's about specific values, specific ways of life that are under attack every single day. Kelly felt her patience beginning to fray. She had tried to keep this conversation civil, but Jason seemed determined to turn her show into some kind of platform for whatever grievances he was carrying. Under attack. By who exactly? Kelly asked, her voice sharpening. By people who happen to love the same music, but might have different opinions about other things. By artists who want to expand what country music can be. By people who want to change everything that made it special in the first place. Jason shot back. Kelly took a deep breath, trying to regain control of her own show. She had dealt with difficult guests before, but this felt different. Jason wasn't just being uncooperative. He seemed to have come with a specific agenda to confront her about something that went far beyond promoting his album. Jason, I'm not sure what you think I'm lecturing anyone about, Kelly said, her voice still professional, but with steel underneath. I'm just trying to have a conversation about music. Your music, which I actually do respect and appreciate. Do you, though? Jason challenged, leaning forward in his chair. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you think country music needs to evolve, needs to change, needs to be more inclusive. That's the kind of talk that's destroying everything authentic about this genre. Kelly felt a flash of genuine anger now. She had built her career on being fair and respectful to every guest, regardless of their politics or personal views. But Jason was twisting her words and attacking her integrity in a way that felt completely unprofessional. I never said anything about destroying anything, Kelly replied firmly. I said, music brings people together. I said, your fans come from all walks of life. If you have a problem with that, then maybe the issue isn't with what I'm saying. The issue, Jason said, his voice rising slightly, is with people who pretend to understand something they don't. You want to talk about my fans? My fans are real Americans who work hard, who believe in traditional values, who are tired of being told they're wrong for loving their country and their way of life. Kelly's jaw tightened. And what exactly are you implying about people who aren't your fans? That they're not real Americans? That they don't work hard? That's a pretty broad brush you're painting with there. I'm not painting anything, Jason shot back. I'm stating facts. There's a culture war going on in this country, and country music is right in the middle of it. You've got people trying to change it, trying to make it politically correct, trying to water it down so it doesn't offend anyone. While real country music has never been about not offending people. The audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something that went far beyond a typical television interview. Kelly's staff behind the cameras were getting increasingly nervous. But Kelly herself seemed to be finding her footing in this unexpected battle. Okay, let's talk about real country music then, Kelly said, her voice steady and controlled. Because I grew up listening to Johnny Cash, who sang about social justice and helping the poor. I listened to Dolly Parton, who spent her career advocating for education and literacy. I listened to Willie Nelson, who's been outspoken about political issues his entire career. Were they not real country artists? Jason's expression darkened. Don't you dare try to use those legends to justify your agenda. Those artists earned the right to speak their minds through decades of authentic music that celebrated American values. They didn't lecture people. They didn't try to shame people for their beliefs. And what makes you think that's what I'm doing? Kelly demanded, her composure finally beginning to crack. What exactly have I said that's so offensive to you? That music brings people together? That your fans are diverse? I'm trying to compliment your reach and impact, and you're acting like I've personally attacked you. Because you don't get it, Jason said, his voice filled with frustration. Every time someone like you talks about diversity and inclusion and bringing people together, what you really mean is that people like me and my fans need to change. You want us to apologize for who we are, to water down our message, to make everyone comfortable? Well, I'm not going to do that. Kelly stared at him for a moment, genuinely trying to understand where this hostility was coming from. She had interviewed hundreds of country artists over the years, and while many had strong political views, none had ever attacked her personally for simply doing her job. Jason, I honestly don't know what you think I want you to apologize for, Kelly said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I invited you on my show to talk about your music, because I respect what you do. I asked you normal interview questions. If there's something specific that's bothering you, something I said or did, then please tell me what it is. Jason studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she was being genuine or just putting on an act. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more intense. You really don't see it, do you? He said. You don't see how everything you just said is condescending. Talking about how my music speaks to people from different backgrounds. Like that's some kind of surprise. Talking about evolution and inclusion like country music was somehow lacking before. Acting like you're doing me some kind of favor by having me on your show. Kelly's eyes flashed with anger now. I am doing you a favor by having you on my show. That's literally what this is. You came here to promote your album, to reach my audience, to sell records. I didn't force you to be here, Jason. You could have said no. Maybe I should have, Jason replied coldly. Maybe I should have known better than to expect a fair conversation from someone who's already made up their mind about who I am and what I represent. What I represent, Kelly repeated incredulously. Jason, you don't even know me. You've been on my show for less than 10 minutes, and you've spent the entire time attacking me for things I never said and positions I never took. You're the one who came here with your mind made up. Jason stood up suddenly, and the movement sent a ripple of tension through the entire studio. For a moment, Kelly thought he might actually walk off the set right then and there. Instead, he remained standing, looking down at her with an expression of disgust. This is exactly what I'm talking about, he said, his voice loud enough that it carried clearly through the silent studio. You can't even admit what you're doing. You hide behind this fake friendliness, this professional smile. But underneath it all, you think you're better than people like me and my fans. You think we're backwards, uneducated, bigoted. You think our values are outdated and need to be corrected. Kelly rose from her chair as well, no longer willing to let Jason tower over her while he hurled accusations. That is completely unfair, and you know it. I have never said any of those things. I have never implied any of those things. You're putting words in my mouth and then getting angry at me for words I never spoke. I don't need you to say it directly. Jason's face flushed red at Kelly's accusation. And for the first time since the interview began, he seemed genuinely caught off guard. The suggestion that he had orchestrated this confrontation clearly struck a nerve, and his response came out more defensive than he probably intended. Play the victim, he repeated, his voice rising to a level that was definitely not television appropriate. Lady, I don't need to play anything. I'm telling you exactly what I think, exactly what millions of Americans think, and you can't handle it. You want to talk about looking for a fight? You're the one who started talking about evolution and inclusion and different perspectives. Kelly threw her hands up in exasperation. Those are normal interview topics, Jason. That's what hosts talk about with musical guests. If asking you about your audience and your artistic growth is somehow an attack on your values, then maybe you're the one with the problem. My audience doesn't need to grow, Jason shot back. My audience doesn't need to be more diverse or more inclusive or whatever other buzzwords you want to throw around. They're perfect exactly the way they are, and they don't need people like you telling them they need to change. People like me, Kelly repeated slowly, and there was something dangerous in her tone. Now, what exactly do you mean by people like me? Jason, please enlighten us all. Jason seemed to realize he had walked into dangerous territory, but instead of backing down, he doubled down with even more vamps. People who live in bubbles. People who think they know better than everyone else. People who have never lived the kind of life that real country music comes from, but want to lecture the rest of us about what it should be. The studio had gone so quiet that you could hear the air conditioning humming. Kelly's crew was frozen in place, unsure whether they should intervene or let this train wreck continue. Kelly herself looked like she was struggling to contain her rage. You don't know anything about my life, Kelly said, her voice low and deadly calm. You don't know where I came from, what I've been through, or what I've had to overcome to get here. But you're so convinced that you're the only authentic one in this room that you can't even see how ridiculous you sound. I sound ridiculous. Jason laughed bitterly. You're the one who thinks asking loaded questions is just normal conversation. You're the one who can't understand why someone might not appreciate being lectured about their own industry by someone who's never lived. It lectured. Kelly's voice was getting louder now, her professional composure completely abandoned. I asked you about authenticity, and you turned it into a sermon about culture wars. I asked you about your audience, and you acted like I was attacking them. Every single thing you've interpreted as an attack has been you putting words in my mouth. Jason pointed an accusing finger at her. Don't try to gaslight me, Kelly. I know exactly what you were doing. I've done enough interviews to recognize the setup. You bring up authenticity. Then you bring up different perspectives. Then you start talking about bringing people together. It's the same playbook every time. Get the country artist to either apologize for their values or look like a bigot for defending them. Kelly stared at him in disbelief. That's not a playbook, Jason. That's called having a conversation. That's what people do when they talk to each other like human beings instead of treating every interaction like a political battle. Everything is a political battle now, Jason replied harshly. And people like you made it that way. You can't just let country music be country music. You can't just let people like me and my fans exist without trying to change us, fix us, make us more palatable to your sensibilities. Nobody is trying to fix you, Kelly snapped. But if you think that having a respectful conversation about music is somehow an attack on your existence, then maybe you need to take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself why you're so defensive. Jason stepped closer to Kelly's chair, his body language becoming more aggressive. I'm defensive because I've seen what happens when people like you get their way. I've watched this industry get torn apart by people who claim they want to make it better, but really just want to make it more like them. Kelly didn't back down from his advance. If anything, she seemed to grow more resolute in the face of his intimidation tactics. People like me, she repeated again. You keep saying that phrase like it means something. What exactly do you think I am, Jason? What terrible thing do you think I represent that's so threatening to you? You represent everything that's wrong with this industry right now, Jason said, his voice filled with venom. You represent the fake inclusivity, the virtue signaling, the constant need to apologize for success. The idea that traditional American values are somehow problematic. Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. Traditional American values. Like what, Jason? Like coming on someone's television show and treating them with disrespect. Like making assumptions about people you don't know. Like turning a simple interview into a personal attack. Are those the traditional values you're so proud of? Jason's jaw worked silently for a moment, as if he was struggling to find words that would adequately express his frustration. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, but somehow more venomous than before. You know what your problem is, Kelly? You think because you're successful, because you have this platform, because people applaud when you walk out on stage, that somehow makes you qualified to judge the rest of us. But success doesn't make you right. Fame doesn't make you wise, and having a talk show doesn't make you an expert on country music or American values or anything else. Kelly's eyes blazed with fury. And what makes you qualified to judge me? What gives you the right to come on my show and attack me personally because you don't like the questions I ask? You want to talk about people who think they're better than everyone else? Look in the mirror, Jason. You're the one who's been condescending and insulting from the moment you sat down. I'm condescending. Jason's voice cracked slightly with disbelief. You invited me here to talk about my music and then spent the entire time implying that it needs to change, that my audience needs to grow, that country music needs to evolve. How is that not condescending? Because I never said any of those things, Kelly screamed, finally losing all control. You heard what you wanted to hear, so you could have this fight. You twisted every single thing I said into an attack, because that's what you came here to do. You didn't come here to promote your album, Jason. You came here to make a point, and you used my show and my reputation to do it. Jason looked at Kelly with a mixture of defiance and something that might have been regret. But if there was any part of him that wanted to apologize or de-escalate, it was quickly overwhelmed by his stubborn pride. Instead of showing any remorse for what he had just admitted, he seemed to double down on his position. You want me to leave? Jason asked, his voice carrying a mocking tone that made it clear he wasn't intimidated by her demand. Fine by me. I should have known better than to expect an honest conversation from someone who can't handle hearing the truth about what they represent. Kelly was shaking with fury now, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The truth? You want to talk about truth, Jason. The truth is that you came on my show under false pretenses. The truth is that you used my platform to launch a personal attack on me. The truth is that you're so wrapped up in your own victimhood that you can't have a normal conversation without turning it into a war. Jason started to unhook his microphone with deliberate slowness, as if he wanted to make sure everyone in the studio understood that he was choosing to leave rather than being forced out. Victimhood, he repeated with a bitter laugh. That's rich coming from someone who spent the last 20 minutes acting like I attacked her for no reason. You started this, Kelly, with your loaded questions and your condescending assumptions. I started this by doing my job, Kelly shot back. I started this by trying to have a professional interview with someone I thought was a professional artist. Clearly, I was wrong about that last part. Jason paused in removing his microphone, his eyes flashing with renewed anger. You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. This was a mistake. Coming here was a mistake. Thinking I could have an honest conversation with someone like you was a mistake. But at least now everyone can see exactly who you really are. Kelly stepped closer to him, no longer caring about the cameras or the audience or the fact that this entire exchange was being broadcast to millions of people. And who am I really? Jason, please tell everyone who I really am. Jason straightened up, having finally freed himself from the microphone equipment. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent studio with crystal clarity. You're exactly the kind of person who's destroying this industry and this country. You hide behind fake politeness and professional smiles. But underneath it all, you think you're better than the people who made country music what it is. You think our values are outdated, our way of life is wrong, and that we need to change to meet your standards. That's not who I am, Kelly replied, her voice steady despite her obvious fury. But I'll tell you who you are, Jason. You're someone who's so insecure about his own relevance that he has to create enemies where none exist. You're someone who's so desperate to be seen as authentic that you'll attack anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of what country music should be. And you're someone who's such a coward that you can't even own up to what you did here today. Jason's face flushed red again. But instead of responding with another verbal attack, he did something that shocked everyone in the studio. He laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound that had no humor in it whatsoever. You want me to own up to something? He said, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. Fine, I own up to this. I'm tired of pretending that people like you are on our side. I'm tired of being polite to people who look down on me and my fans. I'm tired of playing along with the fiction that you actually respect what I do instead of just tolerating it. Kelly stared at him for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but somehow more cutting than it had been when she was shouting. You know what's really sad about all of this, Jason? I did respect what you do. I genuinely enjoy your music. I was looking forward to this interview, but you were so convinced that I was your enemy that you couldn't see past your own prejudices long enough to have a real conversation. Jason picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and slung it over his arm. Prejudices, he repeated mockingly. Is that what we're calling it when people refuse to buy into your version of reality? When they won't pretend that everything is fine while you tear down their way of life? Nobody is tearing down your way of life, Kelly said, exhaustion creeping into her voice now. Nobody is attacking your fans. Nobody is trying to destroy country music. The only person who's been destructive here today is you. Jason walked toward the edge of the set, then turned back to face Kelly one last time. The studio lights caught his face in a way that made his expression look almost theatrical, as if he was aware that this moment would be replayed and analyzed countless times. You really believe that, don't you? He said, and for the first time. There was something almost pitying in his voice. You really think this was all just a misunderstanding, that I'm the problem? That everything would have been fine if I had just played along? Well, let me tell you something, Kelly. This conversation we just had, this is happening all across America right now. People are waking up to what's really going on, and they're not going to stay quiet about it anymore. Kelly watched him with a mixture of anger and something that might have been sadness. And what exactly do you think is going on, Jason? What grand conspiracy do you think you've exposed here today? Jason smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. I haven't exposed anything. You did that all by yourself. Everyone watching this can see exactly how you reacted when someone challenged your assumptions, how you responded when someone refused to play by your rules. They can see who you really are when the mask comes off. With that, Jason turned and walked off the set, leaving Kelly standing alone in front of her stunned audience. The silence in the studio was deafening, broken only by the sound of Jason's footsteps echoing as he disappeared into the wings. Kelly stood there for a moment, looking after him with an expression that was hard to read, then slowly turned back to face the cameras. Her professional training kicked in, and she tried to regain her composure, but it was clear that the confrontation had shaken her deeply. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but there was no hiding the exhaustion and bewilderment in her eyes. "Well," she said to the camera, attempting a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That certainly wasn't what any of us expected today. I want to apologize to our studio audience and to everyone watching at home for what just happened. That's not the kind of conversation we usually have on this show, and it's not the kind of person I usually am either." She paused, seeming to struggle with how to process what had just occurred. "I genuinely don't understand what happened here today. I thought I was having a normal interview with a talented artist, and somehow it turned into something completely different. I guess sometimes people bring their own issues to a conversation, and there's nothing you can do to prevent that." Kelly took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera. "Music is supposed to bring us together, not tear us apart. It's supposed to help us understand each other, not create more division. I still believe that, even after today. I hope you still believe it too." She gestured toward the empty chair where Jason had been sitting just moments before. "I don't know what Jason was really trying to accomplish here today, but I hope he finds whatever peace he's looking for. As for the